The small transport ship moved quietly through the darkness of space. Stars shone like white sparks against the endless black. Inside the ship, a man named Ravi sat near a round window, watching the distant lights. He had seen stars before, but this time it felt different. This was not just another mission. This was something no human had done before. Ravi was chosen to represent Earth in a meeting with the rulers of the Zorth Empire. They were an old and powerful race, known for strength, discipline, and pride for hundreds of years. Their name had been feared in many parts of the galaxy. They believed power was the only truth, and weakness was something to crush. Not long ago, the Zorth Empire had fought a terrible war with humans. It ended after both sides suffered heavy losses. Peace was signed, but trust was thin. Now, for the first time, the Zorth had invited a human to speak inside their royal hall. Ravi was not a soldier anymore. He was an envoy of peace. The ship shook gently as it entered the gravity field of Zorth Prime, the homeworld of the Empire. Ravi fastened the straps of his seat and waited as the pilot spoke in a calm voice. "We are landing in 5 minutes." Ravi took a deep breath. He checked his reflection in the glass of the window. His black hair was neat, his uniform clean. It was a simple white suit with a small blue emblem of Earth on the chest. Nothing too grand, nothing too plain. He wanted to look respectful, not arrogant. The planet below was beautiful. From above, it looked like a giant emerald, covered with green seas and bright islands. Huge silver cities stood like blades rising from the ground. Round them were forests so wide they looked endless. The Zorth were warriors, but they lived in a land full of life and color. The ship landed on a smooth platform that glowed with blue lines. Outside, the tall guards waited. They were Zorth soldiers, wearing armor that looked like polished stone. Their faces were calm but hard. Their eyes, bright and golden, moved to Ravi as he stepped out. Ravi walked down the ramp with steady steps. The air was warm and smelled of strange flowers. Above, the sky was a deep green with 2 suns shining. The soldiers did not speak. They turned and began to lead him toward a tall gate, carved from black crystal dot. As he walked, Ravi noticed how huge everything was. The walls of the palace rose like mountains. Statues of past rulers stood along the path, each one holding a spear. The faces on the statues looked proud, almost cold. These were not people who believed in kindness. Inside, the halls were wide and glowing with soft light from crystals in the walls. The floor was smooth as water, and patterns of stars were drawn across it. The guards' steps echoed as they moved forward. Ravi stayed calm. He knew every eye was watching him. He could feel the weight of their stares. Finally, the doors to the royal hall opened. The hall was vast, like a valley under a roof of silver. Tall pillars lined the sides, and banners of deep red hung between them. At the far end was the throne. It was not like any throne Ravi had seen before. It was shaped like the wings of some great bird, with sharp curves and shining metal. And on that throne sat the queen of the Zorth Empire. Ravi had seen pictures of her in reports, but they did not prepare him for this. Queen Arya was taller than any human, her figure graceful yet strong. Her skin had a soft silver tone, and across her forehead was a crest that shimmered in many colors like living gems. Her eyes were bright, almost glowing, with a deep violet hue. She wore armor that looked as if it was made from light itself, yet it moved like cloth. She sat with her head held high, her hands resting on the arms of the throne. Around her were nobles and generals, standing in silence. Their faces were hard, their eyes sharp. None of them looked pleased to see a human. A deep voice filled the hall. It came from a tall figure near the throne, an advisor perhaps. "Human, envoy Ravi of Earth," the voice said, strong and cold. "You stand before Queen Arya, ruler of the Zorth Empire. Speak with care." Ravi stopped in the center of the hall. The distance between him and the throne was wide, like a river of shining stone. He could feel the power of the moment. Every breath, every word would matter. He bowed his head slightly, not too low, not too proud. "Your Majesty," he said in a clear voice, "I thank you for allowing me to come here in peace." The queen's eyes stayed on him. She did not speak. At once, her gaze was calm but sharp, like a blade that could cut with a thought. After a long pause, she spoke, and her voice was smooth yet strong, carrying across the hall like music made of steel. "Human," she said, "you come from a world that dared to challenge the Zorth. Many of my people wished to crush your kind completely. And yet here you stand, alive. Why?" Her question hung in the air like a weight. The nobles whispered softly. Ravi looked up and met her eyes without fear. "Because we believe peace is stronger than war," Ravi said. His voice was steady, though his heart beat hard. "We fought because we had to, but now we are here because we choose to, and choices make us who we are." The hall grew silent. The queen tilted her head slightly, as if studying a strange creature. "Interesting," she said. "Your species is fragile, yet you speak as if you carry mountains. Tell me, human, what gives you such strength?" Ravi took a breath. He knew this was the question that mattered most. The queen's words echoed in the hall like a quiet thunder. Her voice was calm, but it carried power. Everyone in the room was watching Ravi now. The nobles stood tall and proud, their golden eyes sharp with judgment. They were waiting for him to fail, to say something foolish, so they could laugh or demand his removal. Ravi stood in the center of the great hall. He felt the weight of their stares, but he did not let fear show on his face. His heart was strong. He had been a soldier once, and he had learned that courage was not the absence of fear. Courage was standing firm even when fear was close. "Queen." Arya leaned forward slightly on her throne. Her crest shimmered like glass touched by sunlight. Her violet eyes did not blink. "What gives you such strength, human?" she asked again, her voice smooth but sharp like a blade drawn in silence. Ravi took a slow breath and spoke clearly. "Hope, your majesty. That is what gives us strength." The hall grew still. Some nobles tilted their heads in confusion. A low sound of disbelief moved through the chamber. One of the generals, a tall figure with silver armor, stepped forward and looked at Ravi with cold eyes. "Hope," the general repeated. His voice was deep like a drum. Empty words from a fragile race. "Hope does not stop blades. Hope does not build empires." Ravi turned his eyes toward the general. He did not raise his voice. He spoke as if explaining something simple but important. "Hope is why we rise when we fall. Hope is why we stand even when we are broken. Blades can cut the body, but hope keeps the spirit alive, and when the spirit is alive, no force can truly defeat it." The general's face did not change, but the hall was silent again. The queen watched him closely. Her eyes seemed to search his soul. "Strange words," she said at last. "You speak as if weakness is strength." Ravi gave a small smile. "Calm and gentle. It is not weakness, your majesty. It is choice. The choice to believe in something better than fear. That is not weakness. That is the greatest strength we have." The queen leaned back in her throne, her expression unreadable. Her crest flickered for a brief moment, and then she looked toward the nobles who stood round the hall. Some of them whispered softly, their voices like rustling leaves. Finally, the queen spoke again. "Human, your words are bold, but I do not understand why you value such ideas. The Zorth have no need for hope. We have power. Power commands respect. Power wins wars. Why waste time on dreams?" Ravi looked at her with steady eyes. He did not speak quickly. He took his time, for these words mattered. Because power fades, empires fall. But hope does not die. It lives in hearts, and no weapon can destroy it. That is why we fight so hard, not just to live, but to make life worth living. The queen tilted her head again. Her eyes were still on him, sharp and bright, but there was something else now. Something almost hidden, like a shadow behind a curtain. A question that even she did not fully understand. Before she could speak, another noble stepped forward. This one was tall and thin, with long robes and a crest of deep blue. His voice was smooth but full of scorn. "Your words are pleasant, human, but they are hollow. What has hope given your kind? You fought us and lost half your worlds. You signed peace because you were broken." Ravi turned his eyes to the noble and spoke without anger. "Yes, we lost much. We suffered. but we did not break. That is why I am here now. If we had no hope, I would not be standing before you. Hope brought me across the stars to speak of peace instead of war. The noble's lips tightened, but he said nothing more. The hall was silent once again. Queen Arya raised one hand slightly, and the whispers stopped at once. Her gaze returned to Ravi, and for a long moment, she said nothing. Then she spoke in a voice that was softer but still strong. You speak of hope as if it is a treasure. But tell me, human, what do you see here, in this hall? In me, do you see an enemy? Do you see a ruler? Or do you see something else? Her question was sharp, like a blade that cuts not the body but the mind. The nobles looked at Ravi with curiosity now. Some even leaned forward slightly. This was a test. If his answer displeased the queen, his mission would end before it truly began. Ravi looked at her. He saw her strength, her pride, her cold grace. He saw the hall built like a monument to power. But he also saw something deeper, a question hiding behind her violet eyes, something that no one else seemed to notice. He took a slow breath and spoke. I see a leader who carries the weight of her people, a leader who wants to be strong for them. I see someone who believes power is the only path, but I also see someone who wonders if there is more than power, and that is why I speak. Your Majesty, because I believe there is more. The queen did not answer right away. Her eyes stayed on him, bright and unreadable. The hall was silent, the air heavy like a storm before the rain. Then, slowly, she stood. The nobles bowed their heads as she rose, tall and graceful like a living blade of silver. She walked down the steps of the throne, her long cloak flowing behind her. Each step echoed on the shining floor. She stopped a few paces from Ravi and looked down at him. Her voice was soft now, almost like a whisper, but everyone heard it. You speak boldly, human. Few have spoken to me so. I do not know yet if your words are truth or madness, but I will hear more. Then she turned and walked back to the throne. Her crest shimmered faintly as she sat again. The nobles watched her in silence, their faces hard but their eyes full of questions. The queen lifted her hand and spoke one last time. You will remain here as my guest. Tomorrow, we speak again. The guards moved forward, and Ravi was led from the hall. His heart was steady, but his mind was full of thought. He had not failed, but the real test was only beginning. The next day came with the soft glow of two suns rising over the silver towers of the Zorth capital. The palace shimmered like a mountain of light, its black crystal walls glowing faintly with golden lines. Ravi stood near the tall windows of the guest chamber given to him. He had not slept much, but his mind was calm. He knew the queen would summon him again. Yesterday's words had not ended the meeting. They had only opened a door. But he did not know what waited behind that door. A gentle sound broke his thoughts. The door opened, and a Zorth guard entered. His armor gleamed like polished stone, and his golden eyes held no warmth. The queen calls for you, the guard said in a voice as firm as iron. Ravi nodded and followed. The hallways were quiet except for the soft echo of their steps. Crystals glowed in the walls, and strange symbols curved across the floor like flowing rivers. Ravi felt the weight of the palace again. It was a place built to show power, not comfort. Soon, the great doors opened once more, and Ravi stepped into the royal hall. It was as vast and silent as before. The nobles stood in their places, tall and proud like statues. Their eyes turned toward him as he walked across the shining floor. At the far end, the throne rose like the wings of a great bird, and on it sat Queen Arya. She was as graceful and strong as yesterday. Her silver skin caught the light of the crystals, and her crest shimmered faintly with many colors. Her violet eyes were calm but sharp, like deep water hiding unseen strength. When Ravi reached the center of the hall, he stopped and bowed his head slightly. Your Majesty, he said softly. The queen looked at him for a long moment before speaking. You spoke boldly yesterday, human. You gave us words of hope, of choice. Today, I want more than words. I want truth. Tell me what you see in this empire. Her voice carried through the hall like a calm wind before a storm. Every noble leaned closer, their golden eyes fixed on the human who dared speak so freely. Ravi looked around the hall slowly. Then his eyes returned to the queen. His voice was steady, but gentle. I see strength. I see order. I see a people who have built much and fear losing it. But I also see chains, your majesty. Chains that are not on the hands, but on the hearts. Chains that say power is the only path. That is why there is war. That is why there is fear. A low murmur rose among the nobles. Some looked angry. One general stepped forward, his armor bright as fire. You insult the queen, he said in a voice like thunder. You insult us all. Ravi did not move. His voice was calm. I speak the truth as I see it. If truth is insult, then I cannot help it. The queen raised her hand slightly, and the hall fell silent. Her eyes stayed on Ravi, bright and unreadable. Then she spoke again. You say we wear chains. Tell me, human, do you not wear the same chains? Does your kind not hunger for power? Ravi gave a small smile. We are not perfect, your majesty. We have our pride. We have our greed. But we try to learn. That is why I am here, to learn and to share what we know. The queen tilted her head, her crest flickering faintly. She studied him for a long time. The silence grew heavy. Then she spoke once more. Your words are strange, human, but there is something in them I do not understand. Something I have not seen in others. Tell me this, when you look at me, what do you see? The hall froze. Every noble turned toward Ravi. The question was sharp and dangerous. If his answer displeased her, his mission would end in that moment. Ravi looked at the queen. He saw the strength in her, the weight of her crown, the fire of her pride. He saw a leader who carried an empire on her shoulders. And he saw something else, something hidden deep, a question that even she could not name. He took a breath and spoke in a clear voice that carried across the hall. I see someone who is strong, yes, someone who commands respect, but I also see someone who is beautiful. The hall went silent as stone. The words hung in the air like a bright flame in the dark. Nobles stared in shock. Some stepped back as if struck. Never in the history of the Zorth had anyone spoken to their queen like that. The generals glared with anger. One of them moved forward, his hand near the hilt of his blade. You dare, he began, but stopped when the queen lifted her hand. Queen Arya sat still on her throne. Her violet eyes were wide, and her crest shimmered with sudden light. For a moment, her calm face changed. The faint glow of color spread across her crest. Deep and soft like the blush of dawn, she turned her head slightly, her eyes moving away. From Ravi, it was a small gesture, but in that hall of power and pride, it was like a star falling from the sky. No one spoke. No one even breathed. The queen of the Zorth, the ruler who had never shown weakness, had turned away. Ravi stood in silence, his eyes steady. He did not smile. He did not speak again. He had said what he wished to say. When the queen looked back at him, her eyes were calm again, but something had changed in them, something deep and quiet. She spoke, and her voice was soft, almost too soft for the great hall. You are bold, human, she said. Perhaps too bold. I do not know if you speak truth or if you play a dangerous game, but I will not forget your words. She raised her hand, and the guards stepped forward. Take him to his chambers, she said. As Ravi was led away, the nobles whispered in low voices. The hall that had been silent now shook with questions. The human had done something no one thought possible. He had made the queen look away. He had made her crest glow. And far above the shining halls, the twin suns climbed higher in the green sky, as if the world itself waited to see what would happen next. The twin suns had set, and the night sky of Zorth glowed with green and silver light. The capital city was quiet on the surface, but deep inside the palace, whispers moved like shadows. What had happened in the royal hall that day was already spreading among the nobles. The human had spoken words that no one dared speak. He had called the queen beautiful, and the queen, the ruler of Iron Will, had looked away. It was a small gesture, but in a world where every motion of the queen was studied like law, it was not small at all. It was like a storm cloud forming on a clear day, soft, silent, but full of power. In the chamber of the high nobles, voices rose in secret meetings. He insults the throne. One noble said, his blue crest glowing with anger. This human must be removed before he spreads his poison. Another noble, a woman with silver markings on her skin, spoke slowly. The queen did not punish him. That means something. Perhaps she sees value in him. The first noble hissed. In reply, value? He speaks weakness. He speaks of hope and beauty. These words have no place in our empire. We are strength. We are power. But the queen listened. The woman said, and that, too, has meaning. Across the palace, the soldiers also whispered. Some laughed and called the human foolish. Others spoke quietly, wondering if there was courage in his words. For the first time in years, the halls of the empire were full of questions. And in her private chamber, Queen Arya sat alone. The room was vast, built of black crystal. Lit by soft white lamps, the air smelled of rare flowers from distant worlds. The queen stood near the tall glass wall, looking out at the city lights that shone like stars below. Her crest glowed faintly, but not with the hard light of command. It glowed with something softer, something she did not understand. She thought of the human's words. Beautiful. No one had ever spoken to her like that. The nobles praised her wisdom. The soldiers praised her strength. But no one had spoken to her as if she were more than a crown. Her hands tightened on the rail. She did not know why this word stayed in her mind. She had heard many words in her life, but this one was different. It was not a weapon. It was not a bargain. It was something else. Arya turned away from the glass and walked to her throne room. Empty now and silent, she looked at the great seat of power, the black crystal that rose like wings. She had sat on that throne for many years. She had ruled with strength because strength was the law of Zorth. But now, for the first time, she wondered if power was the only path. The humans' voice echoed in her thoughts. There's more than power. A sound broke the silence. The door opened and a tall figure entered. It was General Kale, her oldest and most trusted warrior. His armor shone like steel in moonlight, and his golden eyes were sharp. You sent for me, Majesty, he said, bowing slightly. Arya turned to him, her face calm. What are the whispers, Kale? The general hesitated for a moment. Then he spoke. They speak of the human. They say his words were bold, too bold. Some believe he should not remain here. Arya's voice was cool. And what do you believe? Kale looked at her, his jaw firm. I believe his words are dangerous. They make the nobles question. They make the soldiers talk. This is not good for the empire. The queen walked slowly to the throne and rested her hand on its black surface. Do you fear his words, Kale? The general's voice grew hard. I fear what they can do. Empires do not fall by blades alone. They fall when doubt enters the heart. Arya looked at him for a long time, then turned away. Leave me, she said softly. Kale bowed again and left, his steps heavy with silence. When he was gone, Arya closed her eyes. She remembered the human standing in the hall, speaking without fear. She remembered his eyes, steady and calm, and she remembered the way her crest had glowed when he called her beautiful. That was not weakness, she thought. That was something else, something she had never felt before. Far away in the guest chamber, Ravi sat by the window, looking at the green sky. He knew what he had done. He knew his words had shaken the hall, but he had not spoken them as a game. He had spoken them because they were true. The queen was beautiful not only in form, but in the strength she carried, in the weight she bore alone. He wondered what tomorrow would bring. He had seen the nobles' faces, full of anger and fear. Some would want him gone. Some might even want him dead. But he also saw something in the queen's eyes, a question, a door opening, just a little. He whispered to himself, this is only the beginning. As the night deepened, the palace was still, but not at peace. Shadows moved in secret halls. Plans were made in silence, and in the highest tower, the Queen of Zorth stood alone, looking out at the stars and wondering for the first time if there was a different way to rule. The morning light spilled softly through the tall windows of the palace guest chambers. Ravi stood by the window, watching the silver towers gleam in the sunlight. He had waited quietly, wondering if the queen would call him again. The halls had been full of whispers and cautious glances, but now the moment had come. A soft knock sounded at the door. A guard entered and bowed. "The queen requests your presence in the private garden." Ravi nodded and followed. The garden was hidden, deep inside the palace, a place few were allowed to see. Strange plants with bright colors and soft leaves grew in carefully arranged rows. The air smelled fresh and sweet. Queen Arya was already there, standing near a small pool of water. Her silver skin reflected the sunlight, and her violet eyes held a gentle curiosity. She wore a simple robe, different from her usual royal clothes. Without the crown and armor, she looked more like a person than a ruler. "Sit, human," she said softly, gesturing to a bench near the pool. Ravi sat carefully and looked at her. For a moment, the distance between them felt small. No nobles, no guards, just two beings from different worlds sharing a quiet space. "You surprised me yesterday," Arya said quietly. "No one has ever spoken to me like that. You call me beautiful." Ravi smiled slightly. "I said what I felt. It was not a trick. It was not a game." The queen nodded slowly. "I have spent my life believing that strength is the only truth. Power is everything. But your words made me wonder if there's more." Ravi looked at the plants, then back to her. "There's more, Your Majesty. There's kindness and hope, and the courage to be yourself. Strength is important, but it is not enough." Arya's eyes searched his face. "Tell me about your world, human. Tell me why you fight so hard to find peace." Ravi thought for a moment before answering. "My people have known war for many years. We have lost many things, homes, friends, even hope. But we believe that the future can be better. We believe that peace is not weakness, but the greatest strength." The queen listened closely, her expression softening. "Your people are brave. To hold on to such hope, they have to be," Ravi said quietly. "Without hope, we have nothing." A gentle breeze moved through the garden, carrying the scent of flowers and the quiet sound of water. For a moment, they sat in silence. Two leaders from distant worlds, sharing a peaceful space. Arya looked down at the pool, watching her reflection ripple in the water. "I have always been alone," she said softly. "The weight of this empire is heavy. I must be strong for my people. But sometimes I wonder if I am losing myself." Ravi nodded with understanding. "Leaders carry heavy burdens, but you do not have to carry them alone." The queen's violet eyes met his. "Why do you say that? Why do you trust me?" "Because you listen," Ravi said simply. "Because you did not send me away. Because you showed a moment of kindness, even if it was small." Arya smiled faintly. "Kindness is not weakness, human. Perhaps it is the beginning of something new." They talked for a long time, about their worlds, their hopes, and their fears. The garden became a place of quiet trust. The queen shared stories she had never told anyone, and Ravi shared dreams he kept hidden from many outside the garden. The palace was full of suspicion and fear, but inside, a new connection was growing. Two leaders, different but alike, finding hope in each other's words. As the sun began to set, Arya stood and looked at Ravi with a new light in her eyes. "Tomorrow, you will meet my council. They will question you and your words. You must be ready." Ravi stood as well. "I am ready, Your Majesty. I will speak the truth." The queen nodded. "Good, because what you say now will shape the future of the empire." They walked together to the garden gate and then parted ways. Ravi returned to his chamber, feeling a quiet hope he had not felt in many years. The meeting had been more than he hoped for. The queen was not just a ruler. She was a person who could change. And somewhere deep inside, a new journey was beginning, one that might change not just the empire, but the stars themselves. The great hall was darker than the royal hall, lined with tall columns that reached up like trees to the glass ceiling. Strange symbols glowed faintly along the walls. This was where the Council of Nobles met, a place full of power and ancient rules. Ravi stood at the center of the hall, facing the gathered council. 12 nobles sat in high chairs, their eyes sharp and cold. They were the most powerful leaders of the Zorth Empire, the queen's closest advisors. Queen Arya sat in a seat slightly higher than the others. Her face was calm, but her eyes showed the weight of what was to come. The council leader, a tall noble named Varn, spoke first. His voice was low and serious, human. You stand in our hall with words that challenge our way of life. You say there is more than power. You say hope is strength. Why should we believe you? Ravi took a deep breath. He looked at each noble. Slowly, because power without kindness breaks, because strength without hope destroys. I have seen worlds fall when people forget these truths. Your empire is strong, but it will be stronger if it can also be wise and just. A murmur ran through the council. Some nobles leaned forward, others sat back, their faces hard. Varn's eyes narrowed. Your words sound like dreams, but dreams do not rule the stars. Laws do. We have survived because we do not trust hope. We trust strength. Ravi nodded. I understand your fear. Change is difficult, but sometimes it is necessary. The queen has heard me speak, and she sees something new. If you refuse to listen, your empire may face war or ruin. One noble, a woman named Rena, stood up. Her silver crest flickered with anger. You speak as if you know our fate better than we do. What right do you have to judge us? Ravi answered calmly. I have no right to judge. I only share what I have learned from my people's pain. We have made mistakes, but we have also learned to hope again. The council grew louder. Some shouted that he should be removed. Others said the queen was being fooled. Queen Arya raised her hand. Enough. Her voice was strong, but gentle. Ravi speaks with respect and courage. I have invited him here because I want to hear his truth. We cannot close ourselves from the future. Varn glared at the queen but did not speak. The queen continued, I ask the council to listen carefully. We will not abandon our strength, but we will consider new ways. If the humans' words can help us, we must be brave enough to learn. The nobles were silent, but their eyes watched Ravi closely. Ravi felt the weight of their judgment. He knew this moment was more important than any battle. It was a test of trust and hope. He spoke again. I did not ask you to change everything at once. Small steps can grow into great changes. Let us build together, not tear apart. Rena sat down, still watching him with suspicion. Varn's gaze softened just a little. Then, unexpectedly, a noble named Tarek rose. He was younger than most and quieter. I believe the humans' words, Tarek said. I have seen too much war, too much fear. If we do not find a new path, our empire will fall. The room grew quiet again. Queen Arya smiled faintly. Thank you, Tarek. Your courage is noted. Varn's eyes narrowed, but he said nothing more. The council debated long into the afternoon. Some wanted to send Ravi away. Others wished to hear more. At last, the queen stood. This meeting is over. We will think on what we have heard. I will speak with you all again soon. The nobles rose, and the hall slowly emptied. Ravi stayed behind for a moment, watching the place where the great debate had happened. It was different from the halls of war and power he had known. A soft voice called his name. It was Tarek. I want to help, the young noble said quietly. I believe your words. The empire needs new hope. Ravi looked at him with surprise and gratitude. Thank you, Tarek. We will need all the help we can get outside the palace. The sun set in the green sky, painting the city with warm light. Ravi knew the path ahead was difficult. The council's challenge was only the beginning. But in that moment, hope burned brighter than fear. The city of Zorth was alive with movement as dawn broke. The twin suns rose slowly, casting long shadows across the tall towers and shining glass. But beneath the beauty of the morning, a dark danger moved close to the Empire's borders. Reports had come from the outer worlds. Raiders were gathering, fierce warriors from distant star systems, hungry for power and destruction. They saw the Empire as a prize. Weak because of recent changes and doubt. Queen Arya stood on the balcony of her palace, looking out toward the horizon. Her violet eyes were steady, but her mind raced. The council's challenge was behind her. But now a real test was near. The Empire needed her strength, and more than that, it needed hope. Beside her, Ravi stood quietly. He had come to know the Queen well in recent days. They had talked long about peace and power, about fears and dreams. Now those ideas would be tested in a way neither of them had expected. The raiders will reach us within days, Ravi said softly. They do not care about hope. They only know destruction. Arya nodded. Then we will show them that the Empire is not weak. We will fight with all we have, but not with strength alone, Ravi added. We must show them that we are united, that we believe in a future worth protecting. The Queen looked at him, understanding his meaning. Together, then, they called the council to the palace again. This time, the nobles gathered quickly, their faces serious. The threat was real. There was no time for arguments. Queen Arya addressed them with quiet power. Raiders come for our world. They think we are divided. We must prove them wrong. We must stand together, strong and united. Varn, the council leader, spoke first. We will fight, but strength alone will save us. Arya shook her head. Strength and hope, together. Ravi stepped forward. I have a plan. We will send envoys to neighboring systems. We will ask for allies. If the Empire shows it stands for more than power, others will join us. The nobles looked uncertain. But Tarek, the young noble who had spoken for hope before, nodded. I will help with the envoys. I believe this can work. The council agreed. Though some still doubted, plans were made quickly. Soldiers prepared weapons. Envoys gathered ships. The night before the raiders were to arrive, Queen Arya met with Ravi in the garden once more. The moonlight shone on the strange plants, casting soft shadows. You have changed many minds, she said. Not all, but many. Ravi smiled. You gave me a chance to speak. That was the real change. Arya looked at him, her eyes thoughtful. I was afraid at first, afraid that hope would make me weak. But you are not weak, Ravi said. You are the strongest I have ever known. A quiet moment passed. Then Arya spoke softly. Thank you for reminding me who I am. The next day, the raiders arrived. Their ships darkened the sky like a storm. The people of Zorth prepared for battle. But something was different. The soldiers fought not only with weapons, but with courage born from hope. The people stood together, united by a new belief. The battle was fierce, but the Empire held its ground. Envoys from neighboring worlds arrived, bringing reinforcements and supplies. The raiders were surprised by the strength of the Empire's alliances. After many hours, the raiders were forced to retreat. The skies cleared, and the city of Zorth cheered. In the royal hall, Queen Arya stood tall, her crown shining in the light. Ravi stood beside her, proud and calm. Today, we have shown the power of strength and hope, Arya said. The Empire is not just a kingdom of power. It is a home of courage and kindness. Ravi smiled. And it will only grow stronger. The nobles who once doubted now looked at the queen with new respect. Tarek stood nearby, ready to help build the future. Queen Arya reached out and took Ravi's hand briefly. Thank you for standing with me. Ravi nodded. Thank you for listening. Together, they looked out at the city. The stars above seemed brighter, filled with promise. The Empire of Zorth had faced its greatest challenge and had not only survived but had begun to change. And in that change was the true strength of hope.